News Radio 840 WHAS. Good Sunday morning. Bob Sokoler, the Louisville Real Estate Show here with you until the top of the hour. Joining us for this half hour, we've got Randy Rocky over at Swan Financial, who they do a great job. They really do. And Randy's a great guy. So good person to talk to. And his team is great in terms of getting you pre-approved. And they got some very special things going on right now. We'll talk about that with Randy with interest rates the way they are. That will help you. Also here, we've got Lee Harris, who is over at Limestone Title and Escrow, and we love Lee for so many reasons, but her brilliance and intelligence is among the top. She is.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, she used to be the legal counsel for the Real Estate Commission, so that should tell folks a lot. And she is the legal counsel for Limestone Title and Escrow. You can reach her on her cell phone with any questions. And fellow agents, note, she is always out there to help you if you have a question or a problem. 649-7964. And you can reach me, Bob Sokoler, anytime. Greg is off today. He's busy doing our videos and photography. You can reach me if you're thinking about selling your home. This is the time to start planning for 2023. And you can reach me to come out and just have a planning session, talk about it. It's free of charge. There's no obligation. 376-5483 is my direct cell phone number, 376-5483. By the way, you can see what the sellers are saying about us. We actually have a redirect on our YouTube channel, and you can go to LouisvilleSellersTalk.com. I had to think about that for a second. LouisvilleSellersTalk.com. Okay, the first question goes to both Randy and Lee. Because this is just crazy. Wire fraud schemes are evolving, and scammers are finding new ways to infiltrate real estate transactions. And that's including exploiting virtual meeting platforms, much like what we're doing right now on Zoom. Yeah. We're still doing COVID shows on Zoom. And so you send a question to me via email, bob@wesellouisville.com, and put a radio question in the subject line and put the question. But that's just to give you an idea that just how bad things are getting. A hacker may break into an email account and invite you or your client or your friend or someone who's in a meeting situation to a virtual meeting, and how the client will know that he or she is being targeted by a scammer. Typically, the hacker will use a still picture, let's say of Lee, inviting this buyer or seller into a meeting. Have you guys heard about this, Lee? Let's start with you. How serious has this really become here in the Louisville area?
No, I haven't. When I received your info, that was the first I'd heard of that. But it doesn't surprise me because the hackers or the scammers figure out something new. Every time we figure out one, then they get a new one. And that doesn't surprise me that they're doing that. So just everybody be careful about wiring money. And
let's get back to that in a second. Randy, have you heard anything in recent months about this level of infiltration of scammers coming after buyers and sellers?
No, I have not, and I'm pretty much on top of that. But like Lee just said, I don't need to repeat.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
It's tough. So, what should be the standard practice for any buyer or seller, either now or in the future? If they're listening to us, what should they be worried about? Either one of you answer. How do they know that the emails that they're getting, the invites that they're getting, are the real deal?
Go ahead, Randy.
Well, I'll start out. We send when we are doing an active loan, every Wednesday we send out about wire fraud that do not take any instructions over email, or you need to call directly to the phone. Let's say it's Limestone. You call if they give wiring instructions. You call. You talk to the individual that you have been assigned to. You hang up because there's some phone interception sometimes even going on, and then you call again right away. And we make very specific the instructions on that. So we send wire fraud out an actual text twice a week. I mean, twice until they close every Wednesday. And What happened, I'll give you a quick rundown. We had a person, it was about a $7,000 wire fraud. We caught it early enough where the bank had not transmitted it. I will not name the bank, but we called them, said, hey, there's a wire fraud transmission. This was a long time ago. This is one of the reasons we put this other step in place, and we've had no trouble since.
Uh-huh.
and they would not stop it. They would not stop the transmission. We're going, look, you do not. We can. You know all the wire fraud that's going on, and really, sincerely, and I mean this, the banks for the most part put their head in the sand on this and act like it's not their responsibility, and it's very, very disturbing.
Got it. I hear you, Lee. Any other suggestions from your standpoint to make sure our buyers and sellers and listeners don't get into a scam situation?
Yeah, that's mostly it, is that when usually if people work with our company, they have been assigned a particular person that they've dealt with through the whole process. And if you call that person and you ask for that person and, you speak with that person, then you should be fine as long as everything's going over, via the telephone, but no emailing or anything like that.
But the buyer or seller or client should initially make the call to, yes, rather than take a call from supposedly
right
any place. Right. I think that's
absolutely.
That's right.
All right, let's move on. The mortgage rates this past week popping up to 7%. I know Randy over at Swan, go ahead and give out your NMLS number.
Yeah, 26362.
Rates are about 7, but I know you and I were talking off the air about a rate that is for anybody who's going to stay in their home 3 or 5 years. Explain that pretty quickly.
Yes. So we have a 5-year fixed rate, 30-year amortization. It's at 4.875, APR rate 6.73, but it's a 4.875 fixed. And I feel like what goes up fast is going to come down. And I think, Bob, almost all of, and not that I'm always right, but all my predecessors thought that rates were going to drop off in the middle of last year.
Yeah.
And I told you I did not think it was going to happen. And
right.
I'm going to make another prediction. I think by August, September next year, rates are going to take a drastic drop.
How far down? Are you willing to go on record with that?
I think they're going to be in the high 4s.
Okay, that's good to hear. By the way, the Federal Housing Administration published a letter to lenders this past Tuesday. I don't know if you received it. You probably did, Randy, urging you and others to consider including a borrower's positive rental payment history when applying for FHA insured financing.
Yes.
So the move is believed to be a boost for first-time home buyers to help improve their credit scores. Do you see that as a viable way of helping first-time home buyers who are renting right now?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. It's called a verification of rent, and we verify it for them, for our underwriters, and it's a very viable option. And we also have another product that you can lock out 1 year. Again, 1 year with a to be determined property.
Uh-huh.
So for the people that are scared to death that rates are not going to drop, we have that. And the one thing we have as a broker over lender, especially as things have gone up, banks and lenders, not brokers, really have to tighten up on their warehouse lines. In other words, they cannot lock rates in right now. There's all kinds of things. It's a repeat of 2008 in some ways.
Got it. By the way, if you would like some information about getting your home on the market, head over to bobsellmyhome.com. That's bobsellmyhome.com. Moving on now. So Samantha writes in, both Lee and Randy, feel free to jump in. She's in her 80s, and she lives in her home by herself. And each year she fears Halloween because kids come and knocking at her door. She says she has trouble walking, and so that it is a problem in itself for her to walk from wherever she is to the door. She has turned her lights off, but kids still come to her door. She wants to put a sign out, but she's afraid if she says no trick-or-treating, the kids may retaliate by throwing eggs or something else at her house. And she's wondering if we have any suggestions on what would be helpful on how to handle this fear of Halloween. Lee?
Well, that used to be the trick, was if you didn't have any treats, you turned your lights out. But apparently that's not working. But you definitely don't want to get tricked, because that means TP in the trees or something like that. So, maybe a sign on the actual door that says cannot come to the door would help, so that when they get up there, they'll realize, this person isn't here or isn't able to open the door. I mean, I would never go up to a house where the light was off when I was a kid.
Right.
But
I agree. But things have changed. Randy, you got any suggestions? Well, I've got one when we're done.
I think Lee has summed it up.
Okay, so here's my suggestion. get a bowl, a cheap bowl, mind you, for candy. Buy bunches of candy, put it all in there, and then maybe a little sign that says, "Please take only as much as you can, or share. Take a little bit, whatever, or no, put any note at all." And so leave it out there. Even if you put the bowl out there with no candy in it, the trick or treater who comes along is going to think, "Oh, the guy or lady before me took all the candy."
Right. That'll save you some money too.
Yeah, it'll save you some money. So just put an empty bowl out there and hope that does the trick. And another sign, that says, "I'm not able to get to the door." So I think those are two things. I feel for Samantha. I know there are a lot of folks who are scared of Halloween because exactly of that they can't get to the door, or they don't with the budget that elderly folks are on, they don't have the money to buy candy. So we understand that. All right, Kathy, we move on. Kathy has sent us an email. She's a first-time home buyer, and she is stressed beyond belief with concerns and questions about buying a home. So we thought we'd help Kathy and other first-time home buyers and repeat home buyers answer some basic questions. So Randy and Lee, I'm going to throw these out there. Feel free to jump on them, what these are. So what is debt? When you hear the word debt, anybody want to jump on that?
It's an obligation you owe to a creditor, and it's usually a monthly payment you have to make until you pay it off.
Okay, good. So that's the responsibility of taking on a mortgage. Saving for a down payment. A lot of home buyers are thinking they've got to save $20,000 or 20% or more. How much should they be saving, Randy?
You could put 0% down. I don't recommend that. It's not where you get your best rate, but you can do no money down homes, and done a lot for you, Bob.
Yeah.
And 3% is a minimum. The 3.5 is what I really at least recommend, and hopefully more, because as you give more of a down payment, it's less risk to the underwriter, and you get a better rate.
So, for example, if you're buying a $100,000 home, you want to save at least 3%. That would be $3,000. And then, Randy, what do you need for what other dollars should you have available if you're buying a $100,000 home?
Now, and we're starting to see, and I bet you are, is the market is finally correcting.
Yeah.
Where it's not totally a seller's market. Now we're starting to see seller concessions again, where they're paying closing costs and prepaid. So if you do, it's about 3%. So either way you look at it, they have to save about 3%, or the seller can pay it, the closing costs.
And just if you're wondering, sellers and buyers, if you're wondering about what's the new norm, what we're thinking, because rates have gone up a bit there. And by the way, we still haven't hit the high of the early 80s and 70s where it was at 12 and 18%. So let's hope that never happens.
Right.
But because prices are starting to come down, and that's what we're seeing, listing sellers are bringing prices down to try to meet the market. You're actually saving money. And so sellers, I would tell you that if you keep your house at one price, expect maybe $5,000 or $10,000 less as an offer. You can use that difference to help the buyer pay for the increase in interest. So there is a balance that's coming about. It's just taking a little time to get there. Shayla has been living in an apartment for the past 12 years and paying $1,900 a month for rent for a number of years. She recently heard from a neighbor that the owner of the apartment complex is considering selling the apartment complex, Lee, and that she may be having to relocate or rent going up. And she's heard rumors of $3,000 a month. Is there anything she can do other than move out if that happens, if it's sold and a new owner takes over and raises rent dramatically?
That's one of two cases. One case is that she has a lengthy lease, say a year or more, in which case, if it's sold, then the new buyer takes subject to that current lease, and the rent would stay the same until it expires. If she is indeed month to month, then they would just have to give her, the new buyer would just have to give her a 30-day notice to either increase the rent and pay it, or to terminate the lease and move out. So yeah, that is unfortunate when you've been there so long, but rent prices are going up for sure.
They are going up, and there's really nothing you can do to fight an increase. Yeah, go ahead, Randy.
Yeah. So can you, as a landlord, if you put in your contract, if we sell the property, then the lease is null and void, or can they not do that?
Well, you can't really do that because it's a separate contract. It's a contract between the landlord and the tenant, and then the purchase contract is between the buyer and the seller. However, a lot of landlords, the buyer, either the buyer or the seller, in order to make the deal better, will go in and sort of quote unquote buy the tenants out and say, we'll pay for your moving expenses, or we'll give you first month's rent somewhere else, or something like that. But it's going to have to be by agreement.
Got it.
In that case. Yeah.
We're going to take a break. With us, continuing, Randy Rocky, Swan Financial, 6450736. Also, Lee Harris, legal counsel over at Limestone Title and Escrow, 649-7964. If you want to talk about listing and selling your home, or even buying a home, you can reach me on my cell phone anytime, 376-5483. We are back in a moment on News Radio 840 WHAS. News Radio 840 WHAS, Bob Sokoler, the Louisville Real Estate Show, here with you till the top of the hour. Thank you, Barbara Corcoran, who's our mentor. So with us, continuing, we've got Lee Harris, legal counsel over at Limestone Title and Escrow. Also, Randy Rocky, Swan Financial. Lee's number over at Limestone is 649-7964. Randy's number over at Swan Financial is 645-0736. And so this is an interesting story, and I don't know whether Lee or Randy, you've heard about this. This happened to me this week. Johnny is a real estate investor. That's how he started when I answered the phone. And he tells me that he just graduated from a real estate investor school where they taught him how to make a lot of money by buying and flipping homes. And he wants to know a couple of things on the phone call with me. And I begin wondering, what did these folks teach these students? We've heard about these. Would we call them scams, or are they, what would you call them? I don't know. They're not what they're presented to be. The first question he wants to know is, what are carrying costs? The moment I heard that, I'm going, maybe you missed that day in class.
Yeah. Carrying costs. Carrying costs would be the cost to, the lawn care, the utilities, and the mortgage interest, and the taxes for each month that you have to carry a property yourself and pay for it before it sells. So if you're living in a house, it's basically your monthly expenses. If it's a house that you're trying to sell, then it would be called a carrying cost, because you're basically carrying that burden until someone else takes over it.
And even the cost to borrow money to do the flip in itself is part of that. Then Johnny asked me, what does it cost to rehab a home? And that's when I had to stop him and say, listen, did you attend this investor school? Because you see, every home is different, and that in itself is a big problem. So be aware of that. And he says he was given a calculator that shows him the cost to renovate a home is 9%. I said, well, that really doesn't matter. It's what the house has and what it needs to be brought up to sell. And so he also asked, and this is where I finally ended the phone call, he's wondering what closing costs are to purchase a new home. Randy, you want to jump on that? What are closing costs to purchase a new home?
Yeah, right. On investment property, you're going to need to put 20% down, and they're going to be about 3% above that. But again, you can have sellers pay the closing costs, so it would be a net 20%.
See, and I got to
tell you, can get as little as 15%.
But he should have learned this in this real estate school, right, or his investor school. So, and I know there are a lot of people who may have graduated. I'm just telling you, you need to go back and maybe either ask for your money back or ask for some more information. So we move forward here. Tommy owns a home where the backyard is full of trees. There's an easement that the utility company has been using for 50 years, trimming the trees that grow around the power lines. And now, and we heard about this on a previous show from another client. Now they want to cut the trees and the easement, taking down several trees on his property that's in the easement. And he's wondering, is that allowed? And we talked about the fact that in a previous show, it is allowed. Is there any recourse, he's asking? Just he lets them come on the property and cut the trees down. Is that right, Lee?
Yes. Well, if it's in an easement, then an easement basically is giving the rights to the utility company to access and to use that land as they need to. So I guess the trees now are becoming a problem. However, they can't just come on the land with a big bulldozer and drive right across his front yard and make a big divot. They would have to put the property, back the way his property back the way it looked. But once you have an easement, it's very difficult, especially a utility easement, because that's for the good of the whole community. It's hard to limit what they're doing. And trees are often a source of, because people like a big tree there. It separates me from my neighbors. It's so pretty. And then if somebody comes and cuts it down, it really can change the look of your whole yard, but there's not a lot he can do.
Yeah, I agree with you. I will tell you a quick story. When I was a reporter in Orlando, Florida, they were expanding the expressways down there, and they used something called eminent domain to not just take trees.
Yeah.
If they were putting the highway through where your house was, they took your house, and they would come up with a fair market value, which was the retail value based on an assessment at the time by their appraiser. I don't know if you could challenge it. And that's the money you got. And it was get out of your house and find another one because we're coming through and leveling your entire house. True story. So, and that happened a lot in Orlando.
I had a dear friend.
Yeah.
I had a dear friend just go through this, and he had to get a lawyer involved, and he ended up winning. But he had to go against the state of Kentucky, and it was a big ordeal because they tried to give him less money than what his house was worth. But he ended up getting that fair market value.
It does happen. It really does. And while you're there, Randy, Chuck is thinking about selling his home and buying a new home in 2023. He's wondering, how does his credit score directly affect the interest rates that he'll be quoted when he buys? This is a really good question for everybody who's planning on buying next year.
Oh, yeah. So it affects it tremendously. So let me give you a quick example. If you're a 720 and above, you're going to get the best rate, whatever the fair market value is at the time. If you drop below that, 720 to 660-ish, you're going to be probably about a half point difference. If you go 660 to 620, you're going to be at about a point. And 620 to 550, you're going to be about 2 points.
So it does affect it. There is a direct correlation.
A huge difference. Yeah. Yes.
So
not only that, on insurance, on a lot of things you buy, car insurance, they have algorithms that show that people with higher credit scores do not wreck as much. I mean, so it affects so many things.
Did not know that, but we should point out it's not too late to work on your credit score. Your first step should be what, calling or going to a credit score, getting a report, correct, Randy?
Yes, and I really recommend that you call someone like us, and it doesn't cost you anything, and we help you through that process. And because, obviously we want people to think of us when you think of financing or think about their credit. So, yes, it is.
Yeah, we'll give out Randy's number in a few moments, but you could always go to a credit score, like creditscore.com, whatever, but it'd be better to have some help from a guy like Randy giving you actual information. All right, and I think this may be time for one more question here. Terrence and his wife have been married for 6 years, and they both own their own homes, Lee. Incidentally, both homes have been paid off, so congratulations for Terrence and his wife. Interesting that they both have I guess they had before they got married 6 years ago. And Terrence is wondering if for some reason his wife would to pass away, would Terrence inherit the other house?
Well, that depends on how the deed is showing. So if it was her house before they got married, she probably doesn't have it in survivorship with him. It's very easy to put a property in survivorship. Usually that's how married couples pass their properties to each other without having to go through probate. So if she needs a little help or he needs a little help, he can call us. We can do a quick claim deed. In fact, we can do it both ways for his property and her property. Add the other in survivorship, meaning that it just becomes theirs when the other party passes away. If not, then it would go into her estate. And if she has other heirs, such as children or parents or anyone like that, or if she has a will, then it would pass according to the estate laws.
Lee, what's the most common way when you're doing a mortgage or a closing? What's the most common way to put the house in on the deed?
Unless there's some reason not to, a vast majority of married people do survivorship. for that very reason. It's simple. It's our house. We live here together. We don't want to, if something happens to one of us, we don't want the other one to have to go through a lot of paperwork and rigmarole to stay in their own house. A vast majority of deals that are not involving spouses would not be in survivorship, would just simply go through that person's estate if they passed away.
Got it. All right. Well, it makes sense. And it's a serious thing to have to deal with. Incidentally, something else that I think is serious. We are hearing that this winter may be a tough one. We may be getting more snow than we have in the past. I'm not sure how good our weather folks are, but I'm preparing for it just by being ready. I have a snowblower, but I haven't used it in years. But next week we're going to tackle cold weather. And we've got believe it or not, 4 tips, simple tips to help make your home more energy efficient. So join us for next week. You can hear the bell ring and that we're out of time. But it certainly should be interesting. And there are a lot of things that we need to worry about. Cold weather, here it comes. Never happy. All right. Our thanks to Randy Rocky. And again, if you're ready to take Randy's number down over at Swan Financial, if you're looking to get what your credit score is, give him a buzz at 645-0736. Also, Lee Harris, legal counsel, Limestone Title and Escrow. And again, a reminder out to all of my fellow real estate compadres that Lee is available to answer questions anytime. She's a great source. Has a lot of great information. You can reach Lee, 649-7964. If you are thinking about listing, selling your home now, next year, or even beyond, and you want to come up with a plan, I'm more than happy to come out and spend some time with you, talk about the process of listing and selling. And also, we've got 12 agents who are ready to help you if you're going to go buy a home. There are more homes coming on the market now, and there are ways to get around the higher interest rates. If you've listened to the show, you know what I'm talking about. You can reach me on my cell phone, 376-5483, or go to bobsellmyhome.com. That's simple. We are out of time. See you next Sunday on News Radio 840 WHAS.